Sit close. The fire remembers.
Her name was Elsa, and she was her father's only child. Every morning before dawn, she took 2 wooden buckets and walked down to the river. It wasn't far, just past the mill, through the grove of willows, down the muddy bank to where the water ran clear and cold, over smooth stones. She'd been doing this since she was 7 years old, 14 years now. The same path, the same buckets, the same river, until the morning it changed. It was early spring, the kind of morning where mist sits low over the water and everything feels grey and hushed. Elsa knelt at the river's edge the way she always did, dipped the first bucket, and brought it up full. The water looked the same, clear, clean, but when she drank, she always drank from the first bucket. To be sure, it tasted different, sweeter, not like honey, not like fruit, just sweeter, cleaner, like the difference between water drawn from a jug and water taken straight from a hidden spring. She frowned, shook her head, drank again. It was still sweet. She told herself it was nothing, that she was half asleep, that early mornings played tricks on the senses. But the next morning it was the same. And the morning after that. She didn't tell her father. He had enough worries. The mill had been slow since the grain prices dropped, and his back had been troubling him more each week. He moved carefully now, grimacing when he lifted the sacks. Water tasting strange, felt too small to add to that. Besides, it wasn't unpleasant. If anything, it made the walk easier. She found herself lingering at the river after that first drink, kneeling in the mist, letting the cold sweetness run down her throat. It made her feel lighter, less tired. The ache in her shoulders, the one that had lived there for years, began to fade. The buckets didn't feel as heavy on the walk back. She began taking a second drink, then a third. By the end of the week, she was cupping the water in her hands and drinking deeply, feeling it spread through her chest like warmth, like relief. Her father noticed. "You seem well," he said one morning over breakfast. "I feel well," she replied. He studied her for a moment longer than usual, then nodded, and returned to his bread. But she saw the concern in his eyes. The second week, Elsa began to linger longer at the riverbank. She sat on the smooth stones, watching the current slide past. The mist curled around her ankles, cool and soft. And when she listened closely, she heard something beneath the sound of water on stone. A low murmur, almost like singing. She told herself it was imagination. The willows, the wind, the quiet. But every morning it grew clearer. Not words, not exactly. More like intention. Like something shaping sound without quite forming speech. And without meaning to, she began to answer it. Not aloud, just in thought. Yes, she would think, "I'm here," and the singing would deepen, pleased. By the third week, she was visiting the river twice a day. Once in the morning, as always, and once at night after her father had gone to sleep, and the mill stood dark and quiet. She would slip down to the bank, remove her shoes and let her feet rest in the water. The current tugged gently at her ankles, cool and inviting. At night, the singing was clearer. It spoke of the deep places, of darkness beneath the stones where the current ran strong and steady, of rest, of peace, of coming home. She didn't question why it sang to her. She didn't question why the water tasted sweet, only when she drank it. She simply listened, and came back. Her father grew afraid. "You spend too much time at the river," he said one evening, his voice careful. "I'm fetching water," she replied. "You go out at all hours. The buckets are heavy. I make more trips." He looked at her then, really looked. "You look different," he said quietly. "How? Thinner, paler, and your eyes." He didn't finish. She knew what he'd seen. She'd seen it too in the water's reflection. Her eyes still held their grey-green color, But something moved beneath the surface now, something that caught the light and held it. Like the river, she began waking before dawn, before birdsong, before the village stirred. No buckets now. She just went. She waded into the river, first to her ankles, then to her knees, standing in the current with her arms slightly outstretched. "Come down," the river sang. "Come deeper. Come home." She wanted to, but some thin thread still held her to the world above. To her father, to the mill, to the life she'd known. Not yet, she would think. And the river would wait. It always waited. One morning, her father followed her. She didn't notice him, until she was already waist-deep in the water, her face lifted toward the pale sky. "Elsa," he called. She turned. He stood among the willows, his face white with fear. "Come out," he said. "Now." She looked at him and saw how tired he'd become. How bent, how frightened. "I'm fine," she said. "You're not." His voice broke. "Look at yourself." She looked down. The water around her glowed faintly, and her hands, resting on the surface, were different. The fingers longer, the webbing between them unmistakable. "You need to come home," he said. "I can't." "Why not?" She had no words for it. The singing swelled, wrapping around her like comfort, like arms. "Stay," it sang. "You're almost home." "I'm sorry," she said, and she let herself sink. The water closed over her head, cold and sweet. Gentle hands guided her down, not forcing, not urgent. Below in the dark, she saw them, the river's daughters, women and children, and a few men pale and luminous, eyes like hers, bodies shaped by water and time. They smiled. One took her hand and pressed a flower into her palm, made of water, perfect and impossible. "Welcome home." Elsa understood. Her lungs burned briefly. Then they didn't. She breathed. The water filled her, sweet and cold, and it felt right. Above, she saw her father on the bank, calling her name. She wanted to tell him she was happy, but she could no longer speak his language, so she turned away and swam deeper. They searched for her 3 days. On the 4th, her father returned to the river alone. He knelt and drank. The water tasted sweet. He saw her then, just for a moment, beneath the surface, watching him. She smiled. He never returned to the river. When he died, years later, they found wet footprints leading from his door to the water's edge, almost human. If you go to that river now, on a still morning, when the mist lies low, you might see them. Pale shapes beneath the surface, waiting, always waiting, for the next one who hears the singing, for the next one who drinks the sweet water, for the next one who's ready to come home.